We started. We are reading Bhagwat Geeta as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We are on text 17. Let's read text 17. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Let's read the purport. Extravagance in the matter of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, which are demands of the body, can block advancement in the practice of yoga. As far as eating is concerned, it can be regulated only when one is practiced to take and accept prasadam sanctified food. Lord Krishna is offered according to the Bhagavad Gita 9.26 vegetables, flowers, fruits, grains, milk, etc. In this way, a person in Krishna consciousness becomes automatically trained not to accept food not meant for human consumption or not in the category of goodness. As far as sleeping is concerned, a Krishna conscious person is always alert in the discharge of his duties in Krishna consciousness, and therefore any unnecessary time spent sleeping is considered as great loss. Avyartha kalatvam. A Krishna conscious person cannot bear to pass a minute of his life without being engaged in the service of the Lord. Therefore, his sleeping is kept to a minimum. His ideal, his ideal in this respect is Srila Rupa Goswami, who was always engaged in the service of Krishna and who could not sleep more than 2 hours a day, and sometimes not even that. Thakur Hari Das would not even accept prasadam, nor even sleep for a moment without finishing his daily routine of chanting with his beads 300,000 times. But 300,000 names means 3 lakh names. As far as work is concerned, a Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not connected with Krishna's interest, and thus his work is always regulated and is untainted by sense gratification. Since there is no question of sense gratification, there is no material leisure for a person in Krishna consciousness. And because he is regulated in all his work, speech, sleep, wakefulness, and all other bodily activities, there is no material misery for him. Let's read text 18. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. Let's read the purport. The activities of the yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is chief. A perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. This perfectional stage can automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In quotes, King Ambarisa first of all engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then one after another, he engaged his words in describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord, his hands in mopping the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing of the activities of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the transcendental forms of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotees, his sense of smell in smelling the scents of the lotus flowers offered to the Lord, his tongue is in tasting the tulsi leaf offered at the lotus feet of the Lord, his legs in going to places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord, his head in offering up obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. All these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee. Quotes close. This transcendental stage may be inexpressible subjectively by the followers of the impersonalist path, but it becomes very easy and practical for a person in Krishna consciousness, as is apparent in the above description of the engagement of Maharaja Ambarisa. Unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical. In the devotional service of the Lord, therefore, these prescribed activities are called archana, or engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord. The senses and the mind require engagements. Simple abnegation is not practical. Therefore, for people in general, especially those who are not in the renounced order of life, transcendental engagement of the senses and the mind, as described above, is the perfect process for transcendental achievement, which is called yukta in the Bhagwat Geeta. Let's read text 19. As a lamp in the windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. Purport: a truly Krishna conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in the windless place. Text 20 to 23 are given together. Let's read text 20 to 23. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulties. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Let's read the purport. By practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. Yes, this is the primary characteristics of the yoga principle. And after this, one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that the yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence without any of the misgivings of identifying the self with the superself. Yoga practice is more or less based on the principles of Patanjali system. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the individual soul with the super soul, and the monists think this to be liberation. But They do not understand the real purpose of the Patanjali system of yoga. There is an acceptance of transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system, but the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. The duality of knowledge and the knower is not accepted by the non dualist. But in this verse, transcendental pleasure realized through transcendental senses is accepted. And this is corroborated by the Patanjali Muni, the famous exponent of the yoga system. The great sage declares in his Yoga Sutras 3.34 Purusartha Shunyanam Gunanam Pratiprasavaha Kaivalyam Swarupa Pratishtha Va Chiti Shaktir Iti. This Chiti Shakti or internal potency is transcendental. Purusartha means material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and at the end, the attempt to become one with the Supreme. This oneness with the Supreme is called Kaivalyam by the monist. But monists are the people who stay in monastery and do the meditation. But according to Patanjali, this Kaivalyam is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, this state of affairs is called Cheto Darpan Marjanam or clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. This clearance is actually liberation or Bhav Mahadava Davagni Nirvapanam. The theory of nirvana, also preliminary, corresponds with this principle. In the Bhagavatam 2.10.6, this is called Swarupena Vyavashishta. The Bhagwat Geeta also confirms this situation in this verse. After nirvana or material cessation, there is the manifestation of spiritual activities or devotional service to the Lord known as Krishna consciousness. In the words of the Bhagavatam, Swarupena Vyavashisht, Vyavasthit. This is the real life of the living entity. Maya or illusion is the condition of spiritual life contaminated by material infection. Liberation from this material infection does not mean destruction of the original eternal position of the living entity. Patanjali also accepts this by his word Kaivalyam Swarupa Pratishtha Vachiti Shaktir Iti. This Chiti Shakti or transcendental pleasure is real life. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra 1.1.12 as Anandmayo Vyasat. This natural transcendental pleasure is the ultimate goal of yoga and is easily achieved by execution of devotional service on Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga will be vividly described in the 7th chapter of Bhagwat Geeta. In the yoga system, as described in this chapter, there are two kinds of samadhi called Samprajnata Samadhi and Asamprajnata Samadhi. When one becomes situated in the transcendental position by various philosophical researchers, he is said to have achieved Samprajnata Samadhi. In the Asamprajnata Samadhi, there is no longer any connection with mundane pleasure For one is then transcendental to all sorts of happiness derived from the senses. Acha. Okay. When the yogi is once situated in that transcendental position, he is never shaken from it. Unless the yogi is able to reach this position, he is unsuccessful. Today's so called yoga practice, which involves various sense pleasures, is contradictory. A yogi indulging in sex and intoxication is a mockery. Even those yogis who are attracted by the siddhis, that is, perfections, in the process of yoga, are not perfectly situated. If yogis are attracted by the byproducts of yoga, then they cannot attain the stage of perfection as is stated in this verse. Persons therefore indulging in the make show practice of gymnastic feats or siddhis should know that the aim of yoga is lost in that way. The best practice of yoga in this age is Krishna consciousness, which is not baffling. A Krishna conscious person is so happy in his occupation that he does not aspire after any other happiness. There are many impediments, especially in this age of hypocrisy, to practicing Hatha Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. But there is no such problem in executing Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. As long as the material body exists, one has to meet the demands of the body, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. But a person who is in pure bhakti yoga or in Krishna consciousness does not arouse the senses while meeting the demands of the body. Okay. Rather, he accepts the bare necessities of life, making the best use of a bad bargain, and enjoys transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. He is callous towards incidental occurrences such as accidents, disease, scarcity, and even the death of a most dear relative. But he is always alert to execute his duties in Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. Accidents never deviate him from his duty. As stated in Bhagwat Geeta 2.14, I was just about to say we already read this in chapter. Agama payino nityas tams titiksh titikshashva titikshashva bharata. He endures all such incidental occurrences because he knows that they come and go and do not affect his duties. In this way, he achieves the highest perfection in yoga practice. I think this was one of the longest purport. Let's move to text 24. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all the material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides of the mind. Let's read the purport. The yoga practitioner should be determined and should patiently prosecute the practice without deviation. One should be sure of success at the end and pursue this course with great perseverance, not becoming discouraged if there is any delay in the attainment of success. Success is sure for the rigid practitioner. Regarding Bhakti Yoga, Rupa Goswami says, one can execute the process of Bhakti Yoga successfully with full-hearted enthusiasm, perseverance, and determination by following the prescribed duties in the association of devotees and by engaging completely in activities of goodness. As for determination, one should follow the example of the sparrow who lost her eggs in the waves of the ocean. A sparrow laid her eggs on the shore of the ocean, but the big ocean carried away the eggs on its waves. The sparrow became very upset and asked the ocean to return her eggs. The ocean did not even consider her appeal. So the sparrow decided to dry up the ocean. She began to pick out the water in her small beak, and everyone laughed at her for her impossible determination. The news of her activity spread, and at last Garud, the gigantic bird carrier of Lord Vishnu, heard it. He became compassionate toward this her small sister bird, and so he came to see the sparrow. Garud was very pleased by the determination of the small sparrow, and he promised to help. Thus Garud at once asked the ocean to return her eggs, lest he himself take up the work of the sparrow. The ocean was frightened at this and returned the eggs. Thus the sparrow became happy by the grace of Garud. Similarly, the practice of yoga, especially bhakti yoga in Krishna consciousness, may appear to be a very difficult job. But if anyone follows the principles with great determination, the Lord will surely help, for God helps those who help themselves. So beautiful story. Let's go to text 25. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. Let's read the purport. By proper conviction and intelligence, one should gradually cease sense activities. This is called pratyahara. The mind, being controlled by conviction, meditation, and cessation from the senses, should be situated in trance or samadhi. At that time, there is no longer any danger of becoming engaged in the material conception of life. In other words, although one is involved with matter, as long as the material body exists, one should not think about sense gratification. One should think of no pleasure aside from the pleasure of the Supreme Self. This state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. Yes. Let's read text 26. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Let's read the purport. The nature of the mind is flickering and unsteady, but a self realized yogi has to control the mind. The mind should not control him, right? One who controls the mind and therefore the senses as well is called Goswami or Swami, and one who is controlled by the mind is called Godasa or the servant of the senses. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness. In transcendental sense happiness, the senses are engaged in the service of Rishikesh or the supreme owner of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with purified senses is called Krishna consciousness. That is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of the yoga practice. Let's read text 27. This is Jnana Yoga. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. Let's read the purport. Brahma Bhuta is the state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. Bhagwat Geeta 18.54. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the Absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. To be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or to remain in Krishna consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. Let's read text 28. Thus, the self controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service of the Lord. Let's read the purport. Self realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme. The individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme, and his position is to render transcendental service to the Lord. This transcendental contact with the Supreme is called Brahma's Samprasha. Let's read text 29 and then we will end it, okay? A true yogi observes me in all beings. Okay. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Let's read the purport. A Krishna conscious yogi is the perfect seer because he sees Krishna, the Supreme, situated in everyone's heart as Super Soul, that is Paramatma. The Lord in his Paramatma feature is situated within both the heart of the dog and that of a Brahman. Sorry, that of the Brahmana. Yes. The perfect yogi knows that the Lord is eternally transcendental and is not materially affected by his presence in either a dog or a Brahmana. That is the supreme neutrality of the Lord. The individual soul is also situated in the individual heart, but is not perfect in all hearts. I'll repeat that. The individual soul is also situated in the individual heart, but he is not present in all hearts. Okay. That is the distinction between the individual soul and the super soul. One who is not factually in the practice of yoga cannot see so clearly. A Krishna conscious person can see Krishna in the heart of both the believer and the non believer. In the Smriti, this is confirmed as follows. Atatvak cha matravach cha atmat hi paramo hari. The Lord, being the source of all beings, is like the mother and the maintainer. As the mother is neutral to all different kinds of children, the Supreme Father or Mother is also. Consequently, the Super Soul is always in every living being. Outwardly also, every living being is situated in the energy of the Lord. As will be explained in the 7th chapter, the Lord has primarily two energies, the spiritual or superior and the material or inferior. The living entity, although part of the supreme energy, is conditioned by the inferior energy. The living entity is always in the Lord's energy. Every living entity is situated in Him in one way or another. The yogi sees equally because he sees that all living entities although in different situations, according to the results of fruitive work, in all circumstances, remain the servants of God. While in the material energy, the living entity serves the material senses, and while in the spiritual energy, he serves the Supreme Lord directly. In either case, the living entity is the servant of God. This vision of equality is perfect in a person who is in Krishna consciousness. Let's end here with Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's do some Radha jap. Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha, Radha, Shri Radha. Have a nice day, everyone.